Hello and welcome back to another video of Minecraft and Reddit stories. Today I'm just going to be improving my farms, but without further ado, let's get into the stories. Alright, here goes the first story. I found a weird photo in a thrift shop book. I found a weird photo in a book that I bought at a thrift store. I was thinking of posting this to r/found photos, but I don't actually have the original photo anymore, so they removed my post. I'll try to describe everything as best as I can. A week ago, I bought a copy of The Shining at our local thrift store. When I got home, I realized there was a photo stuck in roughly the middle of the book. When I first looked at the photo, it looked fairly normal. A blonde woman and a dark-haired man with their arms around each other, standing in the middle of a room. Judging by the woman's poofy hairstyle, the floral wallpaper, and the poor quality of the photo, it was probably taken sometime in the 80s or 90s. I ended up using the photo as a bookmark, and that's when I started noticing some really off things about it. For one, there was another woman sitting on the couch behind the couple, but her face was blurry, too blurry to be just chalked up to the quality of the photo. Maybe she'd been in motion, shaking her head or something, but it didn't really look like a motion blur, it looked more like a smudge. And there was a hand on the woman's shoulder that looked too small and slender to be the man's hand. I didn't think too much of it, but the next day when I opened the book, well, this is going to sound crazy, but I swear the picture looked like it changed. The blurry-faced woman seemed to have two darker areas on her face, where her eyes should be, empty sockets. Behind the couple there was something coming down from the ceiling, two blurry, oblong, dark shapes. I guess I just missed those the first time. But the next time I opened the book, it changed again. The couple's smiles were so broad, they were almost uncanny. Their pupils were so big, their eyes almost looked black. The blurry-faced woman in the background was looking up at the ceiling, and those blurry, oblong shapes, they were legs. Dark pants, men's shiny black shoes dangling from the ceiling. I slammed the book shut. I didn't want to see any more. I closed my eyes and rocked back and forth. I'm not crazy. The photos must have always looked that way. I just didn't look closely. It's a prank. It's a horror book after all. Some teenager must have generated a creepy AI photo and stuck it in. Or maybe they even stuck in multiple photos and I'm getting confused which is which. I knew there was only one photo in the book, but my excuses helped because I couldn't accept that the photo was changing. I tore up the photo and threw it in the trash, but the next morning the photo was sitting on the middle of my kitchen table, and it was definitely different. The couple's eyes were pure black, their grins stretched impossibly wide. The woman in the background was screaming, and the hanging man's legs were more in view. I could see up to his belt. The photo fluttered in my hands as I shook. No, creak. I was staring at the photo, but in my peripheral vision, I could see two oblong dark shapes hanging from my ceiling, slowly swinging back and forth. Thump. Whatever it was, fell to the floor. I scrambled out of the kitchen and ran for the door. As I ran through the living room, I saw a woman in the corner of my eye, sitting on the couch, mouth open and possibly wide, screaming. I grabbed the doorknob. Something clawed at my arm, but I burst out into the front yard and continued running. I didn't turn back until I was at the road. Just barely, I could make out the shape of two people standing in the shadows of the doorway. A man and a woman with black eyes. I looked down at my arm, the 4 scratch marks pooling blood. The next day I visited a little library. Shaking, I stuck the copy of The Shining inside, the photo neatly tucked in. My arm was purpled with bruises and the scratches had turned an awful, necrotizing black. I didn't want to curse anyone else, but I also didn't want to die. So I'd scrawled on the title page of the book, "Pass it on." Okay, now for the next story. My husband is leaving me for a younger woman and all I can think about is the house decor. Hi, I'm writing because I feel pathetic, tired. I just want to skip to when this phase of my life is over. A brief summary of what happened this week, and I can't believe I love this man. My brother-in-law is staying at my house until my family arrives, and my best friend visits me every day. On Monday, my brother-in-law asked my ex to leave the house, and strangely, he actually listened to his brother. Since then, he's only been tormenting me through messages. He wants an amicable divorce and keeps making proposals that only benefit him. I've been trying to stick to a routine because I have 2 children and they need stability, and apparently I'm the only one willing to provide that. Yesterday, he texted me saying he wanted to see the kids, and I agreed. He showed up after they were already asleep. I swore he wasn't going to come. He arrived here at 11 p.m. with a document wanting to talk about how he'd like to keep the house and pay me an additional amount for my share. I just stared at him without saying anything. I asked him to leave because the kids were sleeping, and my brother-in-law added that it wasn't the right time or place to discuss this and asked him to leave. I don't know what happened to him, but this doesn't seem like the man I married. He yelled at my brother-in-law, saying he was betraying him, that he wanted to play house because his own marriage didn't work out. Then he yelled at me, calling me a lazy whore who wasn't going to take his money. He said this house was his and that his 22-year-old girlfriend, Anne, told him I was going to try to keep the house he bought. We didn't respond. I just said he should leave because he was getting messy, and then he left. I don't know why he wants the house back when he can afford to buy another one, and I don't understand how the person I married could try to trick me just to come out ahead in the divorce. I kept asking myself if this is the man I married. He wants me gone, he wants the kids gone. He didn't ask about the girls, about his own daughters. He didn't see them or even ask to give them a goodnight kiss. To him and to Anne, we're just an obstacle, nothing more. I'm not even a person. And that was a heavier story. I agree with what the comments are saying. They're saying to talk through a lawyer only and to document everything. I completely agree. I feel like when dealing with that kind of person, that's the only route you can take with that. Anyways, moving on to the next story. Okay, here goes the next story. My sister tried to steal my baby during postpartum. When my daughter was born, I had a rough time. Postpartum depression, C-section recovery, no sleep. My sister came to help, but instead started acting like my daughter was hers. She would push me aside to pick her up, correct me constantly, even told people she was practically the mom. The worst was when I woke up from a nap and found her rocking my baby in another room with the door locked. I asked her why, and she said, "You were so tired, I thought I should just take care of her for a bit." But I saw the look on her face like she thought she had some claim to my child. She hasn't spoken to me since I told her she's no longer welcome in my house. My parents think I'm being too harsh, but I don't care. I'll burn every bridge to protect my daughter. Okay, here's the next story. I took a job at a used car lot, but something sinister is happening. For context, I've been in retail for years. Sometimes I've been the manager, other times the low man on the block. I don't know if any of you know the feeling, but retail is soul crushing work. Usually it's not hard, even when it is, it's much better than other jobs, but it wears on you quickly. I had reached my limit when I began searching for a different gig. I have a pretty decent resume, so applied to tons of jobs. I was particular though, desperately trying to get out of retail. Fast forward 4 months and I hadn't gotten a single call back. I felt extremely defeated and stuck, to say the least. One evening I decided to go for a drive, just to get out of my apartment and clear my head. I headed towards the far end of my town, just relaxing. I live in the southern tip of my town, and to get all the way to the next county it takes about 40 minutes. Near the line I saw something new. Just off the right side of the main road I saw what looked like a new street. There was no streetlights, no painted lines. Yet as I got closer I saw that it was indeed new pavement. Curiosity got the best of me and I turned onto it. It was very dark, under the canopy of trees which loomed overhead and seemed to knit together in the middle. For some reason this raised the hair on my neck. I thought fuck it and kept driving. This new road meandered through the forest, never straight. Before long the trees opened up and there it was. Settled in what had to be the heart of the forest was a brand new car lot. There were balloons, neon signs, and one of those wacky tube guys flailing in a phantom breeze produced by its own fan. Totally normal where for it a car lot, except there were no cars. I slowed my Honda and pulled in to take a minute and turn around. I didn't see anyone around. The lights were on inside, and though it was a small building, I got the feeling it was hiding something terrible inside. Weird, I know, but I just had a bad feeling. You know what I mean? Like one of those liminal spaces people talk about. Seconds later though, I hate to admit it, I found myself screaming to the top of my lungs just outside my window. A rather lanky, tall man was knocking. He was in a cheap suit with dark hair slicked back and bright eyes peering at me. I gathered my wits and rolled my window down, ready to apologize for being here. "Hello sir, how do you do?" he said to me before I could get a word out. "I'm perfectly fine, but I'm headed out, sorry for stopping here," I told him. I was looking around like crazy, trying to plan out how to quickly get away from the conversation. Then I saw a help wanted sign. "I was just driving through looking for work, but I'm sorry to have bothered you," I said rather quickly. "That is just perfect," he almost seemed to roar. "I'm looking for a salesman. Come on out and let's talk." Before long, I found myself sitting down at his desk inside. We talked for a good long time. He offered me a great opportunity. If you've never been in the car business, it goes like this. Commission is your cut of a sale, front end is what the lot makes versus what they paid for the car, and back end is any fees you can take onto the sale. A salesman gets a certain percentage of those aspects. Here he offered me 50% commission. I have since learned that is almost unheard of in the car selling world. On top of that, he almost granted me a salary of $65,000 just to show up, as he put it. And the best part, I wasn't required to do any marketing. He told me the customers would come all on their own. Like I said, how could I refuse that? I wish I had. Eventually, after I accepted, he told me to go home and get some rest, not to worry about coming to work until Monday of next week, but he would start my salary as of now. I thought that was a little crazy, but I wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Now I found myself with a 4-day weekend and a well-paying job. I hadn't felt happiness ever like I felt in those 4 days. Monday rolled around and in I went. I got my own office. Hell, I had the whole place to myself. When I walked in, there was a note with my name on it and no one else around. The lot was actually a list of rules, 5 to be exact. Rule number 1 was don't go into the boss's office ever. Number 2 was don't call the boss ever. Number 3, don't question the boss. Number 4, if a customer comes looking for a car they saw from an ad, we have it even if there are no cars in the lot. And number 5 was the weirdest one, never turn your back to the boss's door. I was of course weirded out, but there was also a check attached to the note. A check for the full $65,000 salary. Rule number 2, don't call, so I didn't. I began to get comfortable. Shit, this was going to be the easiest job I've ever had. For nearly a month there was no customers, and no cars showed up to sell. I went in every day, played around on my phone, and backed out of the door when I locked up in the evening. It was the last day of the first month when I finally had a customer. Being there by myself, I was honestly kind of worried. I hadn't been trained, but I was going to try and help them if I could. The customer had arrived in an almost brand new Cadillac, so I had no idea what they might want. I let him get out and come to the door before I could even say hello. I heard the office across from mine open up. As I shifted to see what was going on, the boss was standing right beside me. He vehemently shook our first customer's hand and ushered him into his office. Before going inside himself, he came to me. "You are doing excellent, young man. Every rule followed to a T. Why don't you go on home for the day? Here is your check," he said with a large toothy grin. I looked down and was shocked to see another large check. This one was for the amount of $75,000. "What is?" I began to say, but quickly shut up. No questions to the boss. I don't know why I blindly followed these rules, but I was being paid a ridiculous amount, so might as well. He smiled, which sent a chill down my back, and said he just knew I would sell one today, so my monthly paycheck had been increased to include my commission. Yup, you read that right. I was getting at minimum $65,000 a month. Like, holy hell, this is massive, life-changing money. You best believe I walked backwards to the front door and left. That was almost 6 months ago. You would be surprised to learn that the almost new Cadillac was sitting on our lot, priced and ready to sell by the next morning. This happened no less than 5 times a month following the first time. I was making massive amounts of money. Life outside of work was amazing, but I never forgot that the boss was in his office all the time. The odd rules, the strange feeling the place gave me, it was beginning to make me feel nauseous. Every time we had a customer come in, they were almost always driving brand new cars. I never got the chance to speak to them, and the boss would send me home early. The vehicles were always on the lot, ready to sell by the next morning. Life was great until about a month ago. Our customer count has really skyrocketed. I'm talking 15 to 20 people a day. People I recognize from town. Our lot was beyond full. See, none of the cars being left behind are ever sold, even though our influx of business kept growing. The thought that something odd is going on is almost overwhelming at this point. That feeling is worse knowing that I have seen less and less people around town since we started getting busy. Hell, it's almost like everyone has left. 3 days ago, I hit a breaking point when I came in and saw some heavy machinery stacking the cars on top of each other. How in the hell are we supposed to sell half-crushed cars? I had had enough. I went into the office and immediately broke a rule by knocking on the boss's door. On the last knock, the door opened on its own, revealing a dim-lit room with nothing inside. The boss was not there. Nothing was there. Nothing. Then I broke another rule. I called him. Shocker here, but the line never rang. I got an automated message saying the phone number was disconnected. Strike 3 was when I turned my back to the door and walked to my desk. As I turned to sit, the boss was sitting at my desk. Yet again, I began to scream before calming down enough to laugh out loud. "You know, I thought you were smarter than this. Do I not keep you comfortable enough?" he said, with that sickening smile on his face again. "Yes sir, you do. How can we sell stacked cars? We haven't sold a single one anyways." "But we can't sell stacked cars, can we?" I blurted out. I have no qualms in saying I was scared. His eyes darkened as I slid into my chair. His frown is worse than his grin. He told me that I had broken all the important rules but one. He said he was disappointed. My punishment was to be present during his next sale. He said it was my turn to learn. Like I said, that was 3 days ago. We haven't had another customer yet, but I'm terrified. Shit, I gotta get out of here. A car just pulled up and the boss's door just opened. I mean, if this wasn't a horror story, I would think this was like working for the cartel and it was some type of money laundering thing. But if I was this guy and I was getting 65,000, 75,000 monthly, dude, I would have been gone. I would have been gone if I didn't sign any contracts. You would not have heard of me ever again. That's crazy that this guy stayed. There's no way. Okay, here's the next story. Toys in a bathtub. 100,000 annual deaths in the modern day. A number like that feels so impersonal, so easy to ignore. It may even sound small to some. 100,000 lives ended before their time. Each one represents a face, a personality, a family. When I say these things, I can't help but wonder what might go through someone's head. Do I mean some type of disease? Some war? I'm talking about commercial fishing. Commercial fishing takes approximately 100,000 lives worldwide every year. That puts it on par with liver cancer globally and drug overdoses in the United States. The sea is an unforgiving place to us who don't belong there. Storms sweep in from out of nowhere, winds that feel like they'll pluck you off of your ship and throw you overboard into that inky black water. The waves themselves are like hands trying to rip you from the deck and drown you. The equipment itself is dangerous. People get caught in nets, winches or lines, or simply getting crushed by heavy machinery. Add on 20-hour shifts and being hundreds of miles away from any type of medical help, and the numbers start to seem more realistic. There's a million ways it can happen, and I've thought about most of them. When they'd feel like how long it would take to be over, I thought I was at peace with it. The risk of dying like that. My entire family is one of fishermen, and I wouldn't be the first to go out that way. Every fisherman knows he's rolling dice with the sea. Some think the number won't come up, but I always thought mine would. I just didn't think it would come up like this. I was okay with it. I love the sea and everyone dies one day. I was okay with dying in a way I knew that I understood. So why does the way I'm going to die have to be so incomprehensible to me? Why does the fate I've been given, the fate looking me in the eyes as I type this, need to be terrifying beyond my worst nightmares? Why couldn't I have just sunk? Why couldn't I have drowned or died of hypothermia? I'd even take the machinery over this. Tonight started with a struggle. The winds were rougher than usual. The waves crashed against the trawler hard enough to make me feel like I was captaining a toy boat in an unruly child's pool. It isn't a very large boat. Including myself, there are only 6 of us. I'm the senior deckhand, not an official position title. I've just been doing it the longest. It was business as usual. We were casting our lines into the raging sea. The deck pitched and groaned under our boots as we fought to work the nets. Salt spray lashed our faces, and every other second the bow slammed down into the trough of a wave with enough force to make my teeth rattle. I shouted at the greenhorn to keep the line clear, but my voice was swallowed by the howling wind. He scrambled to untangle the net before the winch pulled it taut and dragged him straight to the rollers. The sea doesn't care how careful you are. A loose loop of rope can tighten like a noose around your leg in an instant. 1 second you're on deck, the next you're yanked overboard and gone. The winch shrieked as it strained, hauling up a heavy sodden mess from the black water. The nets whipped and swung like a battering ram, each swell threatening to slam them into the railings. Or one of us. The men braced and cursed, their rain gear slick with seawater, their hands raw from the fight. We worked like that for what it felt like hours, each of us soaked through, every muscle screaming, and like still the storm raged. Waves hammering us until I wondered how long the trawler could endure it. That was when I saw Anders, the veteran of the crew, a man who had 30 years at sea behind him, lose his footing. He hit the slick deck hard, slid toward the edge, and before anyone could grab him, a wave came roaring across the bow. He should have been fine. I swear I checked his safety line, yet through the thick droplets of rain I could see he was completely untethered. He should have been fine, cold and wet from the waves, sure, but fine. Instead, he vanished over the side as if the ocean had claimed him deliberately. We ran to the rail, calling his name, but there was nothing, only boiling black water, lit in flashes by the running lights. For a long moment, nobody spoke. We all knew, once the sea takes someone in weather like this, they don't come back. Then the greenhorn turned to me, his face pale under the spray. Why wasn't he clipped in? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I had clipped him. I was sure of it, weren't I? The captain's eyes lingered on me a moment longer than I could stand before he looked away. Back to your post, he barked, though his voice cracked with something that wasn't command. We stumbled back into place, but I could feel the eyes of the others linger on me. It was my fault. And then just as suddenly as it had risen, the storm died. Not eased, not drifted away like storms normally do. One heartbeat the wind was screaming in my ears, the next there was nothing. The ocean flattened out beneath us like a sheet of dull, grey glass. Even the trawler seemed confused. The hull groaned as if it didn't know how to float without being battered. I don't mean the sea became calm, it was more than that. There wasn't a single ripple. The air was stagnant like old pond water. The only movement was the ship, chugging steadily forward in its course. It was as if time itself had stopped to hold its breath. One of the crew broke the silence. Captain? His voice cracked thin in the stillness. We all turned towards the old man, waiting for reassurance, for some kind of explanation, but the look in his eyes told us the truth. He was just as lost as we were. The ship stopped so suddenly that it sent me to the ground. It was like a car hitting a brick wall. I got to my feet and looked over the sides of the boat, two of my peers following suit. A reel? The greenhorn asked. I answered him, not likely, we're in deep waters. It took a moment for me to spot them. They were partly underwater. 4 distinct shapes clung to the underside of the boat, gray and wrinkled, with shell-like ridges across them, fingertips, impossibly large yet unmistakable. The boat was being held in place from underneath. My throat tightened. What is that? I whispered, though no answer came. The trawler jolted violently to port, throwing us into the rail. Then it swung back to starboard just as suddenly. The whole vessel groaned in protest as we were whipped side to side, sudden jerking motions like a child thrashing a toy. We panicked. The captain called for the lifeboats, and we compiled to the best of our ability, trying to move through what felt like a Category 10 earthquake towards our slim chance at salvation. The creaking intensified, and we felt a new direction to pull. Down. The entire vessel was being pulled under, and not slowly either. We scrambled desperately for the lifeboat. The greenhorn made it, then the mechanic, then the other 2 deckhands. I was last. I still hear the splash of the oars in my head, frantic, uneven as if they couldn't get away fast enough. But the shaking, the thrashing was so violent, the wench broke loose from its restraints and swung at my head. A blur of rusted steel, a crack like thunder in my skull, and then nothing. The last I remember was seeing white and then black. I was shocked to wake up at all, least of all on the same boat. It hadn't sunk, but the crew was nowhere to be seen, neither was the lifeboat. I don't blame them for leaving me. They probably thought I was already dead, and even if I wasn't, the time it would have taken them to drag me on board would have made more than they could afford. And I'm sure the blame for Anders was fresh in their hearts. The thrashing had stopped, everything was still again. I took note of how calm the ocean had become. It was smooth as glass, not a ripple to disturb the murky gray water. I've never seen it like that before today. The boat drifted, but I swear the water beneath us wasn't empty. The glassy surface bulged now and then like something huge shifting far below. I tried the engine. It works, but the boat refuses to move. The prop churned, but the boat stayed still. I tried the radio. It works too, but I can't get any response, only the static that hissed back at me. I've never felt so alone. I almost wish the wench had killed me. At least then I wouldn't be the only one left to hear it. I've tried everything I could think of to get home, but nothing worked. Eventually, I just took the last beer from inside and sat down on the deck, watching the sun go down on a glass sea. I thought about my life, my childhood growing up in Maine, summers chasing fireflies in the backyard, pockets full of sea glass from afternoons on the shore, autumn meant apples so crisp they snapped in your teeth, and leaves that set the hills on fire. Winters were brutal, sure, but they came with snow forts taller than I was, skates scratching across the frozen pond, and hot cocoa waiting at home. Long springs when the rivers rushed and the first green broke through. It was bittersweet remembering such happy things at a time like this. I finished the last of my beer, savoring it as the now lukewarm liquid rushed down my throat. The sun had been down for a while now. I turned around towards the back of the ship only to freeze in place. My blood ran cold and I blinked, desperately trying to wake from whatever nightmare I was trapped in. It was sitting in the ocean like how a child sits in a bathtub, legs pulled into its chest, arms wrapped around them. Its eyes were bright green and wide like trash can lids. They peeked at me from behind its pale, almost translucent skin. I could see veins like blackish purple roots snaking through its body. It looked thin for its size, but judging from what I could see of it above the waters, it was easily larger than my boat, large enough to flip it over like a toy. a starving giant. It's been hours now, hours of an unending staring match of death. I've written this in the hopes that someone will find it so I can tell people about what's out here. Wherever I am, it isn't a place meant for us. A few minutes ago, it opened its mouth, and it hasn't shut since. I can see shattered blanks lodged between its teeth, jutting out from its pallid gums. And another thing too, chunks of what looks like meat and clothes that I can recognize. I'm afraid to turn my back on it, but this crushing fear, the mountain of anxious waiting, it's more than I can bear. If this is how I go, then I'll keep what dignity I can. My plan was to confront it the same way I once stepped into the sea as a boy, not knowing how deep it ran. Before I could take a step, the water began to bulge again, not once but in dozens of places, all around the boat. The glassy sea cracked open like thin ice, swelling and breaking as shapes moved beneath. It was never just one. If someone finds this, don't come looking. I've no hope left, only this warning: don't follow. The ocean isn't empty, it's a lid, and the things below aren't always sleeping. I'm already terrified of the ocean as is, but adding the horror aspect on top of that, I'd never want to go in there. There's something about the sea that is so deeply terrifying to me, I have no idea why, but at the same time, it is so beautiful in its own way. But anyways, moving on to the next story. Okay, here goes the next story. Bought a house in 2014, never received an electric bill during the 7 years we lived there. Husband and I bought a fixer-upper in 2014. The house had flooded, been gutted, and the electricity had been disconnected. I distinctly remember calling to have the electricity turned back on and set up the new account in my name with our bank account information. Electricity was turned on, and then we spent 3 months remodeling the house before moving in. Not long after we moved in, I was gardening in the front yard and saw the meter man pull into our cul-de-sac. I saw him going in the other person's backyard to check their meters, so I told him I needed to put my dogs up before he went in my backyard. He told me, actually, this house is not on my route. Okay, I didn't think anything of it and assumed another meter reader would be coming in the next few days. I really never thought of it again. If there were power outages, I would receive text messages informing of me when power was expected to be restored. I also received a monthly notification that bill would automatically draft in a few days. I never questioned it until around 2018 when we decided to change banks. I was making sure all of the utilities were being set up with our new bank account when I realized that the electric company was only charging us $7.30 a month for the streetlight. Our meter was running. I stood and watched the wheels turn, but we never once were charged for it. We finally sold the house in 2021, and we feared that it would be caught when the new owners closed, but nope, never a bill. No idea how this happened. Any ideas? Of this one comment: why can't things ever like this ever happen to me? Anyways, moving on to the next story. Okay, here's the next story. Pretty sure this was illegal, but I was a kid and didn't think about it. Many years ago, the internet was on dial-up. If you don't know what that is, well, we have the Google now. Yes, we had to hear that every time we connected. I belonged to a long defunct and even for the time, a technology deficient ISP that had probably less than 500,000 members across the country. Don't try to guess, I won't tell. Back then, the customer service didn't rely on much other than personal information. Internet searches weren't very easy to do, so finding information wasn't easy. You'll see why this plays into what I did. I got into a petty teenage argument with somebody on there, and the way the service worked was you could find the master account, and each master account could have up to 5 sub-accounts for kids, spouse, etc., and I found it was under her father's name. So I decided to call customer service pretending to be him, verifying only the address, phone number, and they reset the password. After that, the master account had control over the sub-accounts, so I changed this girl's password and basically locked her out of everything. The ISP went on offline a few months later, but she never got her account back, and I used it only sparingly to be a jerk to people, because that's what you do when you're a teenager, I guess. So I'm pretty sure that this was probably against the law somehow. Nothing ever happened. And for the next and final story, I once lived off random family breakfast for a month and nobody questioned it. A while back, I was broke, hungry, and desperate. I'd already burned through all the obvious free food hacks, Costco samples, hotel lobbies, church potlucks. Then I had the dumbest idea that somehow worked. Every morning, I just walk into random houses around my neighborhood. Not breaking in or anything, just slipping in when a door was ajar or when a garage was open. Or I'd follow a dad grabbing the paper and just nod like I belonged. The trick was confidence. I'd head straight to the kitchen, mumble a casual morning, and sit down like I'd been living there my whole life. Pancake, eggs, toast. Whatever was on the table, I was eating it. Nobody ever questioned me. Families just assumed I was like a cousin, a visiting exchange student, or maybe their kid's weird new friend who crashed that night. I got so good at blending in, I even developed roles. In one house, I was quiet guy who drinks black coffee. In another, I was the cousin who doesn't talk much but always grabs extra toast. I once buttered 6 biscuits in silence while an entire family argued about carpool schedules, and not a single person looked twice at me. Best part, people actually offered me stuff to take for later. A juice box, a granola bar, a leftover cinnamon roll. It was like meal prep without the prep. For about a month, the breakfast was covered. Every time I smell maple syrup now, my brain immediately goes back to nervously buttering toast while pretending to be Uncle Jeff's nephew from Ohio. What a time. That's all the stories for today, and I hope you've enjoyed them.